Nowadays, we're used to the idea that a photograph is a specific moment in time, a second or a fraction of a second. However, professional photographers and others have learned to extend the moment. By using long exposure photography, a photographer can obtain semi-blurred images that seem to capture a moving object. The blurriness makes the object appear to be in motion, allowing for the creation of images that capture not just a moment, but 3, 5, or sometimes up to 30 seconds. This technique allows for the creation of amazing images that are sometimes hard to believe are unedited. Today I'm gonna talk about exposure, specifically long exposure, so if this is your first time here, like, subscribe, and let's begin. We all know that the shorter the exposure when taking a photo, the sharper the final image will be. The longer the exposure, the more blur there will be. But is this always bad? Is it ever bad? Absolutely not, because often this long exposure can affect your image in different ways. For example, in cloudy weather, we can smooth out the clouds in the sky when photographing architecture by increasing the exposure, or when taking photos of water flows, whether it be a waterfall or a stream, we can also smooth out the water's surface, which will give the effect of milkiness in the frame. Those examples are good, but we all know when long exposure really shines: low light shooting. If you have a tripod, shooting in the dark with long exposure can yield some truly amazing results. And now I will share with you a few ideas about how to use long exposure at nighttime. I'm not uncovering any secrets here because, as always, it all depends on your own imagination. You've probably seen a million similar shots on the internet. If for some reason you haven't, they're all made using the same method. You set the camera on a tripod, set the shutter speed to about 10 seconds, press the shutter button, and wait. The camera's shutter opens for those 10 seconds, and all the light that enters during that time leaves its trace. You can also draw in the frame, but for that you need not only a camera and a tripod, but also a good portable light source. And if you want to try drawing with light, here's a small hack. Don't try to draw a mirrored image. Just stand with your back to the camera and, directing the light source in the opposite direction, move it as if you were drawing on a board with chalk. This way it will be far easier to draw and you don't have to devise any workarounds. But even with this simplified approach, you still have to practice. Creating this text took quite some time and required a lot of running, so have patience and don't be afraid to experiment. And of course, this shooting technique should not be ignored when taking portraits. There are no general tips here because everyone does it differently, but here are the shots we've got. Long exposure portrait shooting is roughly the same. Press the shutter, release with a 20 to 30 second exposure, and run around with the light source in your hand, leaving an RGB trail. When taking similar photos, don't forget that the light source should always be facing the camera, so when running around the person in the frame, don't direct the light source at them, but turn it towards the camera. In addition, even with a tripod, you can add dynamics to the frame. Yes, this can be done with not every lens, and to be specific, prime lenses or lenses with no zoom will require another approach. This trick is especially great for architecture, photography, and shooting various buildings and structures with the presence of light sources. Set the camera on a tripod. The exposure is, as always, around 10 seconds, and in the process of taking a shot, simply zoom in. Results would be better if you would use a smooth zoom lens, which I don't have. I use the Kit 18 to 55 lens for these tasks, and it's not smooth at all, but still, here's what I got. You can also play with the panorama, creating the illusion that the building is moving sideways to its final position. It can be abstract, but still you can get really nice shots. For prime lens owners, you will have to move the entire tripod with the camera to create similar effects. And here I would like to briefly interrupt and talk about editing photos. After all, professional level shots are the result of synergy between pre-shooting preparations, shooting itself, and editing in dedicated software. Personally, I use PhotoWorks, and you should definitely check it out too. Beginners will like the intuitive interface. It's possible to understand the program very quickly and without unnecessary stress. Advanced users will definitely appreciate the number of options for working with colors, variety of complex tools for solving tasks like skin retouching or removing objects. You can really make your long exposure photos stand out. And you will find the link for downloading PhotoWorks in the video description. Thanks to the free trial period, you can explore all of the features. Additionally, you can find a special link for our viewers that gives a 60% discount on the full access. So with this technique, you can shoot a Christmas tree or any other glowing object. Zoom will give a kind of radial blur that's focusing your attention on the main object, although at the same time, the main object can be blurred. In addition, do not forget about the most ordinary things such as traffic lights. In the rain or fog, the light from the traffic light will be scattered and the beam of light will look even better, so keep in mind and do not miss the opportunity to take a photo in retro style. If you manage to photograph a takeoff or landing of an airplane, the long exposure shots will be really interesting and conceptual. However, the best case scenario is shooting a helicopter while taking off or landing, then you can get something like this. It's really something, right? You may wonder why I don't explain how it is photographed. The only reason for that is because photos with a long exposure are just the same photos without any special camera settings or tricks. You change one parameter and get totally different results. Just remember, the camera must be stationary and all the moving objects in the shot will be blurred 9 times out of 10. Plus, don't use super zoom lenses for long exposure shots because with their depth of field, even the slightest movement will be blurred. Besides everything I've already mentioned, don't forget about amusement parks. That's where you can get extremely easy in terms of effort, but colorful shots of Ferry wheels and various contraptions in motion with effective and mesmerizing light trails. Some of these images can turn out extremely captivating. And the most spectacular and easy accessible thing to shoot is, of course, Bengali lights. You can stand under an umbrella with fireworks up top behind the frame, and it will feel like the model is covering itself from a rain of sparkles. Or you can use these fireworks to create portals, which can be quite interesting, and even the lights themselves, by sparkling, can create really interesting shapes and forms. In the end, I can say that long exposure most likely won't be your main photography style simply because it can be quite limiting when it comes to shooting conditions. However, I would still recommend you to try it because it for sure is the easiest way to get visually stunning shots without heavy editing work. And that's all for today. Subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, leave a comment, and bye-bye.